Hey, family, Tech Man, how's your spirit? Talk to me, tell me something good. To people that's coming in who don't know, the name of this program is called TACC, To Adversity Come Change. I have a book on Amazon. My workbook is being reviewed right now for Amazon, 10.99. You can't beat it. It's going to help you navigate the beginning of healing. Um, it's probably two more parts to come after that, a little bit more advanced, and then the program, the platform, whatever you call it, the movement. But we're going to do part four of five tonight. And I was trying to wait for somebody to come on. I just got them rolling me one up. Uh, we gonna get that for me. How was you guys' weekend this weekend? How'd y'all like? You see, I got the Knicks shirt on again tonight. The champs from 1973 to today. Knickerbockers, beautiful thing. They did their thing. I'm proud of them. Beautiful thing. Oh damn, I ain't got my glasses. Let me get my glasses. Can't do nothing without them. Ah, yeah, Knickerbocker. See that Nick shirt? It's a beautiful thing, man. Only thing I didn't really dig too much is the owner Dolan. He grabbed the trophy first. You're supposed to let the MVP, the people playing, get it. Then but that is what it is. I understand. And this is part four of five parts. This part is accept your new self. 12 reasons why you need to accept your new self. Like I said, this is talking about why people don't want to heal or be at peace. Because what they've gone through in their life has made them harden. Some of it is instinct. Some of it is natural survival tactics. And once you go through certain things, it's hard, especially when life throws curveballs. And you have to learn on the fly. So like I always tell you, nobody knows the answer. We have to go through it to get to it. It's only through our adversity change takes place. And like I said, you can't get to it until you go through it. And everything that you go through, God is going to get you through. Because everything He makes, He takes care of. And this is what a lot of people don't understand. You're not here, just to be here. You're one out of billions of sperm cells that made it. Like I said, if you didn't get shit out, spit out, or swallow, you have a purpose. You just have to find your purpose in life. And once you find your purpose in life, you gotta, learn to heal. Learn to lies from the truth, and move on and do different positive things to help others. This is what it's about. I'm on here to help others, go through whatever they go through, with the examples of what I went through. And hopefully we can come to a consensus and find a way of peace, and this is what it's about. It's not about the craziness, to be at peace in your life is a beautiful thing. It's a blessing, but you have to earn it. It just didn't come. You had to earn it. And I get it, and this is why I say, the peace that I feel, I want to share it with the world because it's a blessing, man. It's a good thing to be at peace. The first one is the healed version of them feels like a stranger. And that's what happens when, chaos been a part of your life, your whole life. When you heal, it doesn't feel right. You it feel like something off because you always used to something happening. And that's just how life is. Number two, they're afraid their old circle won't like them new, won't like the new healthier them. And that's called peer pressure. And this is one of the things I always say, when we're kids, you go through peer pressure and being afraid and this, that, and the other. But when you're adult, you have no excuse. Peer pressure doesn't exist. Everything starts and ends with you. That's what I say. I no longer point fingers. I point them all at me. Everything starts and ends with me. Anything that happened in my life is because of me. I understand that, you know. So these are the things that we can't worry about how other people say, feel, and think. You just have to, if you want to live right and change your life, do the right thing. There's nothing wrong with that. That's how you get to the paradise. Living right, doing the right thing. And this is why I got the wall up tonight, because the wall signifies, breaking through, trying to do the right thing, living right, and just, understanding that the past is just the past. So measuring stick for the things that you've gone through, things you like, you don't dislike. You make boundaries and you go from there. It's not that deep. Life is too short, so we have to always try to live and do the right thing in our lives. I had to go through hell to understand this, but now I got it. Number three, changes feel like they betrayed their younger self who suffered. And I can get that, because you suffer through all this. Now you want to be peaceful, and, the younger you have rage that he wants to get out. I get it. But sometimes something else in life is bigger. And you have to understand that. It's other things in life that are bigger than ego. Because God says not an Adam's way to pride can enter the paradise. And what's part of pride? Ego. Ego. And what is ego? Ego is easing God out. You got to understand that, you know, and you just have to do the right thing in your life. They worry success will make them a target again. Understandable. A lot of people are afraid, but success is only what you make it. Success is what you make it. Success is you uh, living right, doing right, by you and your family if you have family. My family is gone, so, the people that I have, my loved ones, and try to bring a message of understanding, peace, love, and happiness to the world. And this is what it's all about. You know, like I said, I have no malice in my heart. I understand now. And once you understand, you can't go back not understanding. Things happen in life, and it is what it is. You just have to keep moving on and doing the right thing no matter what. We make mistakes. Everybody make mistakes. But you have to be able to be forgiven, because if you don't forgive, God is not going to forgive you. So this is why I forgive. I chose forgiving over everything else. It makes me feel better, and life goes on. Number five, they feel guilty for healing when others in their family haven't. You're gonna grow past people. People are gonna grow past you. These things are gonna happen. Hey, how you doing there? These things gonna happen. It's just part of life, and you may feel guilty because you've passed someone that you wanted with you, but everybody's not meant to be in your life forever. And these are the things that we have to understand. We want people in our lives forever, but it don't work like that. That's not how life is. And we just have to keep striving uh to do the right thing because it's two places that you're gonna be by yourself in that jail cell. You're gonna be by yourself in that jail
And
cell. You're gonna be by yourself. And you're gonna be in that grave by yourself. So, you know, you just have to make right decisions, right choices in your life, and just live your life right, man. And that's how I live my life now. I try to live my life, better than I did before. Because like I said, we all make mistakes, we go through things, but life is a blessing. You know. Number six, the new self requires saying no, and they've never learned how. You may have family members that you never told no, friends you never told no. But when you change, you're going to say no more because you have to preserve your things, you have to preserve your peace. And this is just how life is. Like I said, once you unsee life, you can't go back to not seeing it. You see it for what it really is. See it for people for who they are, and you don't judge. You just understand that's where they are in their life, and that's not where you are, and it is what it is. Live and let live. Keep pushing. Number seven, they're scared they'll become judgmental of who they used to be. That's understandable. That's understandable. When you realize that you may have went down the wrong road in your life, and you see that if you would have did things differently, maybe things would have been different. But one thing I always say is that even though I say that I wasted a lot of my years, I really didn't because I learned something. I got something. I acquired a connection with God, with Allah. So it was beneficial that I went down that road. And like I said, if anything would have changed, I wouldn't be the person I am today. And I love the person I am today, you know? And, like I said, life goes on. Things happen in life, you know? We just got to understand that no matter what, we just have to keep trying to be better every day. One of my prayers is to be better tomorrow than I am today. That people around me or who ain't around me, that they win, you know? Just how I am. Eight, healing threatens the coping mechanisms they've relied on for years. That speaks for itself. Some people just don't want to change because they think if they change, something's going to change, or or nothing's going to change. But that's life. They don't feel worthy of a better life that comes with healing. So many people beat themselves up. I used to beat myself up, so I understand. You think you don't deserve better. When you're going through certain things. But that's just how life is. You got to go through it to get to it. Your choices shape your adversities. Your adversities are your lessons to get you to your blessings. It's just that simple. But you got to understand that when you're going through these things, uh, it gets better. Nothing that lasts forever. Hard times, good times, nothing lasts forever. So just be thankful for the times that you do have and just live the life to the best of your ability. Number 10, they fear outgrowing their current relationship. Like I said, sometimes we might outgrow people that we love dearly. We have to come to the conscious decision and make the choice that what's more important and what are you willing to sacrifice? Some people are willing to sacrifice for that. Some people are not. But the whole thing is, it's up to you. Everything in this life depends on the things that you do in your life. Like people say that people can control you. No, people control your life if you let people control your life. If you have a goal, a aim, and a mission, there should be nothing that will stop you from going through what you need to go through to get to where you need to be. Because, like I told you, when I did the Napoleon Hill Foundation Science Test and Go Rich, when I got a diploma in that, one of the things that stood out to me the most is the person that wins is the one who goes the extra mile when nobody's watching. And see, that's the main objective right there. When nobody's watching, they're going the extra mile. They're going to do double what you're going to do because they know how important it is to get the mission done. It's not about going to work and, oh man, I hate this job. No. Another thing that they taught me, it says there was a street sweeper. It says, whenever you have a job, do it like it's the best job in the world because someone is watching. And what happened in the 20s or the 30s, that's when New York had elephants and uh, horses, and there was a guy who was a street sweeper and he would sweep up uh, dung. And he did it with such professionalism and enthusiasm that they wound up hiring him. One of the CEOs of a company that he was doing it on the block wound up hiring him, and he went from a janitor to one of the chief officers in years because his tenacity was to the roof. His willing to even if he didn't like what he was doing, make it look like it's the best thing that ever happened to him. And these are things that we have to understand that we have to learn how to play the games of life. And sometimes we let our egos get away and things happen, but you always have a chance as long as you breathe into always, rectify life. And this is, just being human. We're not barbaric, we're human. Number 11, the Hill version has no excuse left for not trying. Like once you heal, you know the truth. Like I said, once you know the truth, you can't go back to not knowing. You can't go back to not knowing. You cannot go back to not knowing. So the whole thing is once you heal, man, you should be trying to be better, do better, live better, you know, uh make life better for yourself and the people around you. And this is what this is all about, man. Like I said, we have to be able to do the right thing in life and go through our lives with the understanding that, man, we don't have all the answers. We don't have all the answers. And it's only through our adversity change takes place. We just have to understand that. But number 12, they're terrified of failing and being the new person. And that's very understandable. Change is hard, man. A lot of people don't understand, going through transitions in life are hard. I used to hate moving from one cell to another or moving from one apartment to another. Change is different. So we can't really understand sometimes, but we must. You know, and then see, this is the thing: accepting your new self is a major turning point. This is exactly what your healer guides people through, helping you accept who you're becoming so you can fully achieve and appreciate love. And it's so simple to it's difficult. Like I tell you, bad don't feel good to me no more, so I don't do it. I feel comfortable living right, doing the right thing, understanding that my blessings come from God and nothing is ever going to change that. Nothing will ever change that. My blessings come from God. I can't look for my blessings from man because I'll be disappointed every time. But the beautiful thing about it, right? When you have that understanding and you go through what you go through and you heal, once you start seeing yourself healed and feeling it, like I said, it's a whole different vibe. It's a whole different feeling. It's a whole different everything. And what you have to understand is that when you're going through life's changes and you need to make changes in your life, you just have to keep striving, keep putting putting your best foot forward. And I guarantee you'll get there in time. Look what the boy in the Knicks said, just you gotta keep striving. You gotta keep striving. One foot in front of the other. That's the only way you're gonna win. And like I said, it's a beautiful thing when you can see life for what it is and people for who they are and you don't judge. You just understand what it is and you keep moving in life. You know, like I said, man, life is too short. You know, it's time for us to heal so we can make a better place for ourselves in this society. Of course, if we don't, it ain't gonna be nice. These people are doing crazy stuff. But inshallah, God has the last say at all times. But we're gonna do part 5 tomorrow, and you guys have a blessed night. TACC man out.